because the purple color that's in the grape goes into the juice and into ultimate.
See here? They put like grapes there, and then they added yeast.
And it will squeeze the juice out using this thing to crank it down. Hello, everybody. How's it going? Kevin Luther and Jerome Luther here with Voluptuary and Lucid Wines for our trivia night. So those of you who tuned in right away there got a little sneak preview as I flashed up the questions on the screen. I may or may not have been trying to organize them into the right part of the screen. Didn't realize I was live yet, but it's all good now, and we are proper live. So thank you guys for joining us here for another Saturday night live virtual wine tasting. So we have a really cool lineup of our wines here. I say that every week because it's always cool. We got one white wine as well as 4 of our red wines, mostly Lucid heavy, but the one Voluptuary. And for those of you guys who don't know, we are one tiny winery. I'm the owner winemaker, and Jerome is everything else. He does.
We just hired a couple other guys who are going to be working with us part-time basis for the stuff that even I don't want to do as well.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. Just keep passing it down. And so we're tiny, though. This whole winery space is 20 feet wide and 50 feet deep. I can only fit about 80 barrels of wine in here a year, and our production, our whole thing is just tiny. We're maybe the smallest winery in California in the U.S. So that being said, all of your support and all of you guys joining us means so much and matters so much. And you're supporting of my 2 brands, Voluptuary and Lucid, which they're both me, and we make both of them here. I just created 2 brand names to identify the difference between some of the more extremely experimental components of Voluptuary wine, kind of hardcore, organic, natural winemaking, and Lucid wines, which still has the same values of organic and natural wine, but is a little more laid back. So, well, that being said, with a little intro to who we are and the wines we're tasting tonight, most of you guys watching at home have your virtual tasting kits. Oh, I'm just making sure that's not messed up there. Have your virtual tasting kits, and you guys are tasting along on those things. So feel free to crack open your first vial, your first little tasting kit.
Let me go grab a kit real quick for visual.
Yeah, and he can show you that in a second. But essentially, you can crack that first one. That is going to be the L1 Skin Contact Chardonnay. Feel free to put that in your glass just so you have something to sip on while we start talking and while we start doing the first trivia question, because that is our theme tonight. So I've prepared a series of trivia questions, and I will pop those up on the screen. Like I said, I gave you guys a little sneak preview, so some of you may have already started researching answers. And the way this is going to work is I'm going to flash those up on the screen. We'll also talk about the question briefly. And then while you guys are thinking about that question, you can type your answers into the comment section on Facebook or YouTube where we're broadcasting live. Your answers in that comment section during the time that we are talking about that question before we reveal the answer will be your answer to the trivia question. Now, if you want to play along, just answer every question, and I'll announce when I'm about to end the time. Put a comment down as your answer, and it's timestamped so I can look at it later, so no cheating. And at the end, if you've answered all of them correctly, we're going to give you $20 towards a purchase. If you've answered all but one correctly, we're going to give you, what was the prize? Let's see, the free shipping on any order. And if you answer all but 2 correctly...
And that free shipping on any order can, in a lot of instances, be more than the $20 off, to be honest.
Yeah, it's true. And if you get 2 wrong, but you answered everything, message us and we'll give you 20% off all of our kit sizes. The small ones, the medium ones, or the large ones. As well as a code for a 99-cent tasting kit, 1 per person. Now, if you get all of them right, you get the top prize and all the ones below it. So on and so forth. So a lot of giveaways here today. So those should be fun.
So if you're the top prize, you get $20 off a purchase, you get free shipping on a purchase, and you get the 20% off. And, and if you get
Yeah, and
one off, you get the free shipping plus the 20% off.
yeah,
And
exactly. So
okay, that's
some pretty cool prizes. That's a lot of money I'll be giving away for you guys. But
I feel like the other guy in the infomercial. Like, I can't believe it. I would expect to pay this much for that.
So, all right. So without further ado, I'm gonna go. I have to manage this on the computer off screen. I'm gonna pop up that first question for you guys.
And all bullshit what he does. So this is what each of you has, give or take. There are some different sets, and we will be showing actually some other different options a little later. But you basically have your set of your 5 little tasters and a tasting sheet that we make up. Lists a little bit about us as a company, and then about the specific wines that you're drinking. So I generally explain this to people when I deliver, and a lot of you have done this before, but the way it works is the little bottles, they're just too itty-bitty and adorable to label. So they just line up from light to dark along this list. So you just go down as we drink and pull them out, and they'll go along with what we have on here. And you got some basic info on the wine, prices, space to make notes, and then Kevin and I, fill in a lot more detail when we're going back and forth about the wines.
Yeah. So cool. So you should be having up on your screen right now the first trivia question, which is, what is orange wine, aka golden wine, made from? Now, for some of these questions, I'm going to give you guys a little hints or like multiple choices to just help you along in this a little bit. And since I'm going to pretty much give this answer quite quickly, I'm going to give you guys some hints. This is kind of a gimme. So is orange wine made from oranges? It's also called gold wine. Is it made from gold flakes? Is it made from white grapes? Or is it made from a blend of oranges and white grapes? So, all right. You can throw out your answers in the question or in the comments here.
This is going to be a really hard test, I can tell already.
Yeah, I'm one of those nice teachers, you know. And this first wine,
the nice teachers are the ones that take it hard on you and make you learn.
Right? True.
Go ahead. Sorry. I digress.
Yeah. That is deep though. They're the long-term nice ones. So this first wine, our L1, it is a blend of Chardonnay primarily with a little bit of Malvasia Bianca. And for me, aromatically and flavor-wise, you get aromatically more of orchard fruits, peach, pear, tropical, and then on the palate, a little more of the citrus fruits, more mandarin, tangerines, even some Meyer lemon.
Oranges.
What are some kind of other orangey citrus? A really refreshing summertime wine. This is our only white on the Lucid lineup and quite popular.
And it's one that, and we talk about this often as well, that can be enjoyed both chilled, crisp, refreshing on a hot day like a standard white, and is also pretty good in room temperature, where you get a little more of the funk and body, and it drinks more like a red wine. That's the way I prefer it, just because I'm not a white wine drinker by and large. I prefer something a little funkier, go with my cheese and things like that. So I think it tends to pair better for that when it's warm, and when it's light and crisp, better with like excuse me, like a Honeycrisp apple or seafood or something.
Yeah, I agree on that. And so this is from organically grown grapes, a couple different places in California, Lodi, as well as down near the Bay Area in Contra Costa County. And as usual, I have my alternative pairings for this stuff. So this is the spring and summertime hanging with your friends. And now that, stay-at-home orders are starting to ease up, you can maybe hang out with friends again and chill, bottle this down, and hang out by a pool or a lake. My music pairing with this is I'm Alive by Michael Franti, an awesome Oakland musician, sings songs of hope and freedom. And that's just a beautiful song about being alive and living in the moment. And then my literary pairing for this is from Paulo Coelho, from his book, The Alchemist. And he says, "When we love, we always strive to become better than we are. When we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too. So, he's a big Paulo Coelho speaks often of concepts of setting your mind towards and your intention towards a final goal, and through your belief and action, creating that.
That name sounds familiar, but I'm not placing who that is. Do you know, or was that just
no, Paulo Coelho. His book, The Alchemist, is his most famous book, but he's a I forget his original country. I was thinking Brazilian, but I might be wrong on that. His original language of writing wasn't in English, I believe, but it's been translated into many languages. And that book in particular is just a really beautiful book, and it almost it's like a parable, really, of a young man who seeks out his fortune on the road.
And the alchemist and the alchemy implied is kind of what you were saying, changing your world and through thought.
Yeah. And so I could never summarize that book because it is a really beautiful and deep book, but that is kind of the gist of it. Yeah. And then food pairings Jerome covered pretty well. You can find this wine at the Sacramento Natural Foods Co-op. At the Federalist is another place that buys a lot of this. And am I missing anything? That's kind of the main.
The L1, I want to say that is at Buckhorn Grill as well.
Oh yeah, that's right. Buckhorn Grill also sold a lot of that, especially their Mother's Day special. They went through cases of that. So that is our first wine, and the answer to this first question is we had a lot of good guesses here. No, JB, it's not made of sunshine.
That is a very good guess.
Yeah, that wasn't technically a guess. She said it tastes like sunshine, which I think is pretty reasonable, actually. But there's been a lot of guesses. I think the number one incorrect guess was white grapes with oranges, a blend. While a reasonable guess and intuitively sounds right, actually orange wine, as we refer to it in general, is a white grape made like a red wine with skin contact. So I didn't say the proprietary name of this wine, which is L1 Skin Contact Chardonnay Blend, because that would kind of give away the answer. But it is made with skin contact, and that skin contact with grapes whose skins are sort of golden and orange extracts a golden and orange color into the wine, as well as a sort of golden and orange aromatic and flavor. So that's why you get this flavor. But the most popular original term for it in the U.S. was orange wine, which I found very misleading, which is why I usually call it skin contact wine or golden wine.
Amber wine is the same thing as well, correct?
Yeah, there's lots of names for it. But so that is what orange wine means. I'm going to pop up this next question, which is sort of a follow-up on that first one.
All right, while he's doing that, I wanted to show you something I was referencing in my last stall session. Is most of you have these little tiny vials with the corks, which I love. They're super, they're just tiny little bottles, and people have been doing different things with them, filling them with colored liquid to make a prism rainbow on their windowsill, or putting plants in there growing out like little herbs, or, all sorts of other little upcycle arts and crafts. And I love that, but as it's been getting warmer and warmer, and we're getting more and more people on the East Coast, in the middle of the country, all around, not just locally, we're having leakage issues. The corks, they're imperfect. Air gets through. It's not it's a porous material. So we're making some changes. Soon you're going to start receiving, rather than in these twist top vials, a little more scientific. They're your taste tubes rather than your little mini bottles, but they still have that same ability to reuse. And on the same note, for the larger size, for the 100 milliliter, and it's weird, they're all the same size. They look so different, because of the shape, but instead of the current corked little milk bottle jug, we're going to be going with one of these other options, either with the snap top, in one of various shapes, or maybe in the mason jar. So you don't win a prize other than your preference of container if you vote on it. But it would be kind of cool to get people's feedback on which you prefer, which you like best. These flip tops in either the octagon or the square, the mason jar, or the little twist vials. All of them are going to solve our issues, but we enjoy having you be a part of the game as well. So let us know what you think.
Yeah, it's been doing these virtual tastings with these little tasting kits has been a really fun experience of innovation, of playing around with ways to get small samples of wine out to people.
It's never been done before, so there's no model to follow. We're it.
Yeah, exactly. It was, so being in the forefront of innovation means you problem solve as you go. and we've been, from the beginning, it's been really popular, but we're always wanting to do better and better and give you guys the best experience possible. So I think these are going to just level it up to the next level. So definitely your feedback is highly encouraged.
Yeah, you'll also know your packages will start showing up with a little more packaging, chilled from dry ice we include during the shipping, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't always announce all of it, but you'll get continued innovation and always slightly better each time you receive, hopefully.
Yeah. So okay, so you guys are probably looking at the question on the screen of what color is grape juice inside of a red grape. So this, like I say, is sort of the inverse question of the last one. So
he's not the best at multitasking. It's unscrew or talk, both. It's just like awkward.
Yeah, I'm a very bad multitasker. So the okay, get your answer out quick because I have a lot of questions here. So I want to get 2 per wine in, but I also want to give you guys enough time to answer. But I'm not going to leave this up for very long. So get your answer out quick. What color is grape juice inside of a red grape? And again, it's not multiple choice, but I'm just going to suggest a few,
we don't really know that, do we? It's like Schrodinger's grape innards, because once you only see it once they're outside the grape.
That I suppose technically is true.
I'm sticking with that as my answer. Go ahead. Everyone's correct.
Yeah. So all right. You'll see we've just poured our next wine. You can pour your next wine as well. That is the L3 Manifesto Barbera. This wine is one of my lightest red wines I've made. Not in color, not in the color of fruit you describe, because it is darker in color. You would describe blackberry and plum and pomegranate, but the actual flavor in terms of, is the wine dry? Is it heavy? No, it's light. So it's dark in color and flavor, but light in finish, light in the weight in the palate. So yeah, it was something I went for where, usually when wine's light, it's also light in color. You get pink and red fruits. I wanted a light wine that had dark red fruit flavors.
I like to think of it as like a clean and straightforward. A lot of the wines I really like the Wanderlust, we're not tasting today, but actually the L7 is kind of like this as well. Very complex, spicy notes and dark fruit notes and all this. This one it does have some, peppery notes and cocoa notes, but it's mostly just really fruity, straightforward. You get those blackberries and plums. Yeah. Not a lot of tannins, not a lot of funk, not a lot of spice. It's just like a very straightforward, clean juice made into a wine, and it's actually become one of my favorites as well, despite that not being my style.
Yeah. So yeah, and the way we achieved this, and now I'm giving the answer essentially, because the way I achieved this, it kind of tells the answer. This I started by leaving it as whole berries. So as you said, the juice inside we can't see yet. It's whole berries, but then I crushed the grapes. And the thing is, red grapes have red, purple, black skin, and inside it is clear. Well, okay, a couple people threw out some interesting guesses here, like white or green or white wine color, which any of those is basically correct. I'll give you a yes on that. Because if you squeeze the juice off as rapidly as possible, from whole berry to squeezed out, you get essentially a white wine. There is no red, purple, black color inside of the grape. And this is a technicality, but if you have very, very ripe grapes, basically borderline raisins, sometimes the skins start to degrade and leak some of the skin's color into the juice inside the berry. but that's a pretty extreme rare case. So if someone like answered with those specific commentaries, then you get a yes. But otherwise, yes, it is totally light inside. So then to get a red wine, you have to crush the grape and leave it in contact, juice and skins, to extract that color into the wine. That's how we make red wines. The way you make a rosé or a Blanc de Noir champagne is with very small amount of skin contact, because it's like extracting a tea bag. The longer you leave it in, the darker and heavier it gets. That's how you define the overall color and flavor profile of a red wine, is how long you leave it in contact with the skins and how heavily you crush those skins.
That's news to me. I knew that, it was kind of the opposite of the skin contact, but so what I did is I went and grabbed the rosé, which is the same grapes as the Barbera we're drinking, but this is done as a traditional red and this is done as a rosé. It was my understanding that it actually had no skins in it and that this was the color of it. But you're saying it's actually even lighter than this, and this is just minor skin contact?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Why I have a slightly darker rosé than most people is because I left it in contact for about a day or two. And most people making rosés in a very light style usually only have contact for maybe a couple of hours, if anything, So yeah, just reviewing some of the. Yep. Oh, Tammy says, "Damn, Jerome, deep thoughts." I think relating to your Schrodinger's berry.
Oh
reference.
Yeah. I get stoned before I come on the show. Sorry.
Nice. And Shannon Madison commented that she's pairing the orange wine with prawns with a white balsamic drizzle and the Barbera with chicken enchiladas. And I want Shannon Madison's to be like my guest mom for tonight and cook me dinner.
Yeah. No offense, Mom. Awesome. But yeah, that first pairing, that sounds amazing. The prawns with the white balsamic, and especially it being a white balsamic, that would be an amazing pairing with that, because you still got, the prawns. It's a seafood, but it does have a little more like funk and flavor to it, and then you got your balsamic.
Yeah,
got that sweetness, that crispness.
Yeah. I think it's also, I haven't really eaten much today. So everything sounds really good, but that does sound amazing, Shannon. Okay. We have we're still drinking the Barbera here. We're going to talk about that a little more, but we already gave the answer to that, essentially. So now I've popped up the next question, which is, how many milliliters is in a standard glass of wine? Now, some of you may be asking, well, why don't you say, some U.S. measurement, ounces or, cups or something? Well, wine is initially a European tradition, and everywhere in the world, but us pretty much, use liters and kilograms, because 1 liter of liquid is 1 kilogram. It's a really beautiful system that's very logical, but we have our inherited system that was based on a king's foot and his cup and stuff. I don't know.
We're not necessarily in favor of just going along with the inherited system, whether or not it's the right way to do things. So we're going to go with the correct way.
Yeah, I think that's very good. Poignant comment. So get your answer out quick. Milliliters of wine in a glass. Now, I'm not talking about, and I have to explain this question a bit. I'm not talking about just whatever glass you have, because, if you have your mason jar, that's obviously different from this versus, a small vial of glass. I'm talking about a standard glass of wine. The universally accepted glass of wine. There is a standard there.
Like if you went out and you went to a restaurant and you're buying a wine, a glass, the amount,
exactly,
a glass of wine.
There's a legally defined standard of a glass of wine. And because you guys can Google this one, get your answers down now. I'm going to announce it in like 10 seconds. So you just get your answers, type them real quick, throw it in there, and I'm going to tell you the answer, because otherwise you guys are all just going to Google it, and then you're going to do the research and figure it out. So, okay. L3 Manifesto Barbera. Hope you guys are enjoying this. It is definitely one of our fan favorites, just for being easygoing. I think other wines have more of a niche fan base. This one's just sort of like people who are like, I like medium red wines that are just, nice fruit flavor but easy. This is that one. So this kind of seems to please everyone. The answer is 150 milliliters. For people who are not familiar with milliliters, that's almost exactly 5 ounces. And in most restaurants, you're going to hear people people who worked in restaurants are going to say, but it's 5 ounces. It's not milliliters. Well, it's technically milliliters because a bottle of wine is 750 milliliters and it has 5 glasses of wine. So, it's very, very similar. If people put 5 ounces because they didn't know milliliters, I'll probably give them points, but it's technically slightly different from that. So yeah, this is a standard glass of wine. Now, this is going to play into a question later that we're going to, I think I have it in here somewhere, that there's a concept called a standard drink. 5 ounces of wine, or 150 milliliters, is equivalent roughly to the amount of alcohol in a can of beer, a standard can of beer, which is equivalent to what's in a shot of standard hard liquor. These are called a standard drink. Now, again, this is going to tie in later, so file that away. But it's going to come up later, so I don't want to give you too many hints. So anyway, okay. Now that I've revealed that answer, I'm going to pop up the next question, and we're going to give my pairings on this Barbera. All right, so my pairings for the Barbera. I have my life pairing, which is, pretty straightforward. A dinner with friends, autumn or spring nights. Like I say, it's not like a cold weather wine. It's not exactly a summer wine, although it could be. It's sort of your spring and fall wine. Dinner with friends, it goes with food very well because it has very nice acidity. And it should really be shared with friends and social, because this, in Italy, Barbera is kind of the wine of the people. It's not too expensive of a wine usually. It's grown, bought in the region of Italy, in the northwest of Italy where it grows. It's a wine that's more accessible. It's still a very nice wine, but it's a more accessible wine. So it's really something you should share with friends.
I'd suggest things like pork or duck, especially paired with like stone fruit, plum or peach or something along those lines. Maybe even something spicy like some chilies in there with that as well.
Ooh, I like that, like chipotle plum sauce pork, or
yeah,
that could be good. I'm not even gonna add to that. He pretty much nailed that. If you're vegan or vegetarian, do the same sauce with tofu.
Or like portobello mushrooms, because these are also, and that's something I pay attention to. I've got a different perspective on things for various reasons, but I pay a lot of attention to the woods he used in there and how that kind of ties in with the wines. And these are made on, aged on French oak and maple, amongst some other woods, which generally grow in very kind of moderate temperatures, not near the coastline where it's hot, not up in the mountains where it's really cold. Along the rivers, in the middle of the country, places where there's game, there's cattle, there's mushrooms, there's stone fruit, and things along those lines. So you can really oftentimes determine your pairing by things like that. Like, on a similar note, this the L1 that we discussed first, it's aged on some woods that grow along the coastlines, and it pairs very well with that type of temperature, with the foods that grow and live in that kind of climate. So you can kind of tie that in and play along.
So then my other pairings with this, my music pairing is Feeling Good by Nina Simone. If you guys don't know Nina Simone, go look up her music. Just some of the most beautiful, soulful music you've ever heard. Baltimore, amazing, beautiful song. Very applicable right now too.
Somebody was blasting that at their house when I was doing deliveries today.
Oh, nice, yeah. They really, these are uplifting and beautiful songs. And my quote, my literary pairing, it's not exactly literature. It's actually a song by one of our favorite rappers, Brother Ali. And the quote is, "Respect patience, excellence, and truth. Make good choices and always follow through. But above all else, know Allah always watches, and everything we do comes back upon us." So, just a testament to living a good life based on patience, excellence, and truth, making good choices. I mean, it's a song to his son, giving advice on how to be a good human being. So, I think it's beautiful. Okay, answer to the question. There's been some good guesses. The answer is 300 bottles. Now you can do the math. It's what it boils down to is a standard barrel.
You may have said the question and I missed it, but do you actually say the question?
I'm not sure if I actually said this question on. You guys
I'm not reading the screen.
You guys have seen it on the screen, but the question was how many bottles worth of wine are there in a standard barrel of wine? And since we were just on a roll talking, I didn't even interject with a question, but you guys all saw it, and I saw all the guesses there. It is 300 bottles. I know that seems shocking. You can see these barrels behind us, and it's like, no, you can't fit 300 of those in there. Yeah, you can. It's 225 liters is a barrel. We like to say 59 or 60 gallons, but that's because it's like 59.679 or something, some random number that actually is 225 liters is a standard European original barrel of wine. Of course, there are barrels in brewing that are different. There are barrels in other industries that are different, but in wine, 225 is the standard barrel. So a bottle of wine is 750 milliliters, which is 3/4 of a liter. You do that math really quickly, you start to see, okay, yeah, that's 300 bottles of wine. So it's shocking. It doesn't look like that, but it's totally true.
Next question is, how many monkeys can you fit in a standard American oak barrel? No, I don't think they have an exact monkey age. It varies too much.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So we have the next question up, which is, what is the first written reference to winemaking? Just in anything. Standard.
Pliny the Elder.
Oh, that's a good guess. That's a good guess. So I'm going to let that hang out there for a moment. You guys can just throw out your suggestions in the comments. But, and I might throw out some multiple choice like suggestions after you guys have just thrown out some guesses. But we'll see. I don't know if we'll do that. I don't want to make it too easy for you guys.
Should we go into the third one?
Yeah, that sounds good.
You got one open over?
Yes, right here actually, the unlabeled one.
Yeah, I'm just doing this out front so that people can see where in the lineup we're drinking.
So this one is the L4 Ripen Zinfandel. It is my really jammy style Zinfandel. It is brought these grapes in very ripe, and Zinfandel, which is one of the most famous grapes of California, is just known as this blackberry, jammy, spicy kind of wine that just wasn't really known widely until it was grown in California. It's originally from Italy, known as Primitivo, and Croatia before that, but they made it in a style that was lighter and it's way more complex. Like, it was more floral and spicy, a little bit more like a Pinot or something, but we made it in a style that was altogether different, just more jammy, more full-bodied. And we
Americanized it.
Yeah.
Because it really was, like, when I didn't know anything about wine, when we were growing up, like, Zinfandel was like the red wine grape. And the way you describe it, where it's just like everything extra is kind of
exactly
how it was.
Anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
Yeah.
Because of an American motto. And it's a wine, comes from the foothills. This one wasn't organically grown, but it's from a very awesome small production vineyard. It was, it's not organically certified, but it was organically grown. And it was aged on oak, but also on cherry wood. So that cherry wood, so again, I talk about this almost every show, and because I've talked about it so many times, I don't ramble on it too much anymore, but I use other woods, which I've never met another winemaker in the US who does. There's a few European winemakers who do it, but oak adds a lot of the flavors in wine that tends to contribute your spice flavors, your vanilla and chocolate and toastiness and clove. A lot of that comes from oak itself, but also from the way that oak is toasted before wine is put in it for storage. But other woods can add really cool, unique flavors that you can't get from oak. So it's something coming from a woodworking family. My brother and our other two brothers, Marcus and John, worked in woodworking as well, or still do. Marcus has his own company, Ambrose Crafts. Check it out, Ambrose 852 Crafts. They're on Instagram and Facebook and the internet. But so coming from that background, using other woods was an idea that came from my brothers largely, and then it was something that was just intuitive to me to experiment with. This has cherry. It enhances the cherry fruit, but also adds a spice that to me is a little bit white pepper, a little bit black pepper, and just kind of increases the overall complexity of the wine. Okay, the answer to the question. I think there's some really good guesses out there. When I was doing research on this, there's a lot of conflicting evidence on the internet. So there's a really clear, obvious answer, actually, but a lot of websites claim something different, because you'll hear people claim the Bible, the Odyssey. There's a Greek lyrical poet, Alcman, who made reference to it. And these are some of the earliest like discussions of winemaking extensively. But they're actual, and also I should mention, wine has been made since 7000 BC in China. The earliest discoveries, 6000 BC in what's now the country of Georgia. So it's been made for a long time, but there wasn't any written reference until the first written piece of literature, the Epic of Gilgamesh, extensively mentions wine, and specifically the divinity Siduri, goddess of wine. So, so that is the first written reference to wine.
I thought for sure it was Pliny the Elder. He was all about European style wine. Sorry for like the two of you who got that joke. That was hilarious.
I'm not sure I didn't get that. Like, I know there's a beer, Pliny the Elder.
Pliny the Elder was one of the first historians. He was the first person to do a lot of things, but he also had a really odd fascination with urine as a cure for everything.
Oh.
So that's why I said he did European style wines mostly.
Oh, nice. Yeah, a couple people were commenting that they either like the complexity of, or like the uniqueness of our questions, that they're wine related and or like more complex. But then a couple other people were saying like, yeah, these are way too complicated and hard. Okay, fair enough. As a winemaker, I have 3 degrees in winemaking. These seemed like straightforward questions to me, but admittedly,
we'll grade on a curve. We
Yeah.
want people to get prizes. If that's not where the answers end up, we'll adjust accordingly. Top person and then next person or something along those lines.
yeah, that's a good idea. Whatever the most number of correct answers are, that will win the top prize, and the next number gets the second level prize.
I'd say that's reasonable.
Yeah. So, all right, we'll grade on a curve, and for my next trivia night, I'll try to ask some simpler questions. But I'm at least.
Don't worry, I'm designing the board for bingo night.
Oh yeah, we are going to do a bingo night at a later date. So this is honestly, I'm seeing just tons of comments. We have 92 comments right now. So this is clearly a popular one that people are enjoying. So we'll definitely repeat this trivia night and adjust accordingly. So you guys probably see the new question on the screen, which is, what are some non-vegan additives or impurities that are in some wines? So just name one that is used in wine. And this is one that is obviously fairly relevant to our winery.
Bacon?
Well, okay, I did see bacon once added to wine. Maynard from Tool has a winery, and he did an Instagram post that's kind of internet famous, where he posted and he said a customer asked me if my wine was vegan, and I realized to my horror that it was, and it was a picture of him putting bacon in his tank of wine.
That it wasn't.
Which was is kind of funny but also offensive. So all of our wines are vegan. I do not add bacon to my wine. I do not add anything non-vegan to my wine. But you will see winemakers do this. I was trained at UC Davis, a winemaking school that's very technical. We're chemistry and biology based. Where we take most of the same classes as pre-med students into our third year. It's very much based on scientific studies of how to make the most technically correct wine. So what it boils down to is that wine is, to make really great wine, you kind of have to age it and adjust the wine and blend it and do all these artistic traditional things, or you need to use modern techniques to accelerate that process. And that's where a lot of these non-vegan things come in. Did you have a thing you want to chime in for? I saw you.
No, I was just waving at somebody.
Oh,
Hi.
okay. Nice. Okay. That being said, we're on the L4. I'm going to give you guys a second to answer that before I chime in with the answer. So this wine, life pairing for this is just totally barbecue wine. I think it has enough weight to it and finish to it that this could be like a winter warmer fireplace wine, but more so to me, this is a barbecue wine because it has enough acidity and freshness and bright fruit to it to just be fun to drink, but it also has enough acidity that it pairs with food very well. This isn't a food pairing special, so I'm not talking about it much, but in general, I find that high acid wines go very well with food, especially when the food has a lot of oil or fat. So especially like if you have like just some good fatty cuts of meat or fried chicken or something with a lot of oil and fat, then the acid of the wine cuts into that and helps cleanse your palate. Like that oil coatiness you get in your mouth gets cut through with the acid.
Like pulled pork or chicken adobo or
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
I like that description.
So my music pairing for this is Have a Nice Life by Merce. Cool Bay Area rapper. And my literary pairing for this is from John Muir. Thousands of tired, nerve-shaken, over-civilized people are beginning to find out that going to the mountains is going home, that wildness is a necessity. John Muir, an awesome environmental revolutionary and writer, wrote beautifully about nature and just really championed national parks and preserving nature for humanity. And I'm a big fan of John Muir. Yeah,
good description. So I'm going to take this time now to show you guys some of the other sets that we have in addition to the little
Awesome.
small individual tasters.
So real quick, before he does that, I'm going to give you guys the answer here. Well, there's lots of answers. So if you had said any of these, fish bladders, milk protein, originally it was just whole milk, now purified milk proteins, egg whites or purified proteins of egg whites, pig gelatin. All of these things are added to wine as fining agents that soften wine quickly. So huge wineries that are making wine very rapidly and the wine's very harsh and rough, they add these things to soften the wine. It's a chemical reaction where proteins interact with rough tannins to make the wine softer. It's kind of crazy. Another thing that's non-vegan in a lot of large production wines is bugs and rodents, because they're oftentimes caught up in the harvesting machines in the vineyards and through the processing area. And in large wineries, pretty much wine under $10, under $15, they cannot afford to sort the grapes. They process them at really massive speed and they don't sort. And wineries laugh. Like I knew an intern at a large winery who saw a rat and was like, stop the machines, like we can't let that get in the tank. And the winemaker laughed and said, ha, 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 the alcohol kills it, don't worry about it,
It won't drink much.
yeah. Yeah, it won't drink much, right? So this is huge wineries do this $15 or less. You're gonna have like small parts of fining agents and impurities from the processing. They are admittedly minuscule percentage-wise, but if that's something that matters to you, then you pretty much want to buy wine that's $15 or more, because otherwise it has that. Just pretty much guaranteed. Yeah, so all right. The next question I'm going to pop up on the screen, and then Jerome's going to be showing you these right now.
So what you see here are the different options we have for tasting kits. A lot of you have our original. It's the $8 tasting kit, which we made to make sure that it's accessible to everybody. That's been our most popular. Historically, it's becoming more and more a minor purchase compared to some of our other options. The newest one we have is probably our most popular. These are the 100 milliliter kits, whereas these are only 25 milliliters per. These are, as we now know, exactly 2/3 of a glass each. So you have the 5 of these, and you got 2/3 of a bottle as well. So that's pretty good, nice single portion. Whereas these little tasters allows you to taste, but not much more than that. Another of our most popular kits is the 2-person kit, where you've got 2 of the single kit, 25 milliliters each, along with a full bottle, winemaker's choice. And of course, you can request something else from the lineup. You can't just go through each time and cherry pick the most expensive one. But if you like whites or reds, and we have the other one standard, we do grant requests. We want you to be happy. The most economical option, the one where you get the most wine per dollar, is the 5-bottle kit. And it's the same 5 as you have in any of your other kits, but it's the full bottles. So that's for when you have a family or a household that's multi-habited, or you just like to drink, or you have the money to invest that you want to support a small local business. So those are your different options, anywhere from $8 so that you can just get in the door, or about $100 so that you can really enjoy and really invest in what we're doing. So bring you back to the main stage here. And this is easier to do now that I got a thing where I can see where it's pointing.
Right. That does help a bit here. All right. So we had some really fun guesses there. Don't worry about that.
So do that.
So the answers were really great. There was a lot of really good guesses there, and one of my favorites was feet. There's definitely no there's no full feet in there, but yes, there is a traditional technique of foot stomping grapes. So yeah, I mean, in a sort of manner, I guess there is sort of some residual feet in certain types of wine, but even amongst natural winemakers, foot treading is not a very seriously practiced technique anymore. It's just, yeah, it's gross. What can I say? I don't do that at all. And someone asked, I think it was Tammy, asked, gosh, do you sort your grapes? Yes, we 100% sort our grapes.
We pick out all of the rats first.
Yep. No bugs, no rats, no nothing. No, we work with very small vineyards. So when this happens at wines under $15, it's usually because the grapes are machine harvested. And the machine harvesting process, they shake the whole vine, and they have this huge tray underneath. And yeah, they have like a air blowing across it to like shoot out leaves and light material. And they might even have some sort of like filtered sorting machine to pull out the sticks and stuff. They can't sort everything out. We work with small vineyards that pick each cluster individually, and then they place it in like a tray that they then lay into a bid that we receive, which is already like 100% clean. And then when we process it, we take those clusters and put them through our de-stemming, crushing machines. So we're doing them so one by one kind of processing at such small scale that we are able to ensure that like nothing gets in. I mean, no leaves, no nothing. It's just like the cleanest. Even if the grapes are slightly overripe or underripe, sort them out. That's one of the reasons I launched this winery after having run larger wineries. Was I wanted to be able to take that hand care and take like my focus on craftsmanship and quality all the way through, including sort of the grapes. So yes, good guesses though. A lot of people guessed egg whites or eggs, which is totally correct. Lots of good guesses there. So this next question you guys have had up on the screen for a while, actually. So I'm gonna throw the answer out here. This is a kind of quick one, but this is gonna allow us to keep moving into the next wines and keep throwing you guys some good questions. So the question was, where do the buttery flavors in some Chardonnays and other wines come from? So there's some good potential answers. Chardonnay grapes. Well, some grapes like Chardonnay and Semillon are prone to sort of richer flavors like pear and sort of pastry-like, but not really. Like, that's not the correct answer. I maybe give you like half credit for something like that. You might ask, is there added flavorings? No, you can't legally add flavors to wine unless we're talking wine coolers. So then some people are going to say, and I noticed some of these guesses, oak. This isn't exactly incorrect, but oak adds more. There's vanilla flavors naturally in the oak barrel. There are even coconut flavors naturally in the oak barrel. And this isn't just like crazy winemaker talk. When they literally chemically analyze an oak barrel, there is vanillin and whisky-lactones, which taste like coconut. And it sounds crazy because it sounds like whiskey, but lactones are taste like coconut. And these things are in oak naturally. So you actually get flavors which you think vanilla, coconut, it's almost a buttery flavor. It's sort of a creamy, light flavor, but that's not quite right either. The correct answer is a malolactic fermentation, which it's a bacterial fermentation. So after yeast convert sugar to alcohol and make wine, a secondary fermentation occurs, sometimes concurrently with the first one, sometimes after, usually in barrel, which is why a lot of people think that it's caused by the barrel. It happens in a barrel usually, but it's caused by lactic acid bacteria that ferment malic acid into lactic acid, which makes the wine softer. It actually removes a hydrogen ion and makes the wine less acidic. It also creates diacetyl, a molecule which also exists in butter and makes butter smell like butter. It also makes wine smell like butter when you ferment a wine through this secondary fermentation.
That's interesting that the thing that makes it smell like butter is actually the same thing that makes butter smell like what we associate as butter.
Right? Isn't that crazy? It's one of the things that I think people like, when you're new to wine, one of the funniest things about wine is how people describe it, right? I mean, it's like geeky.
Well, they don't normally describe it like that. Like, I've never heard about whiskey lactosine or whatever.
Well, and usually people don't get into the science behind it because even most winemakers I know don't know this stuff. I really geeked out on it at one point and did a lot of research into the aroma molecules behind the flavor of wine. Because I just found that so interesting how we get these different flavors in wine. So, yeah, it's literally the same molecule. So when winemakers or wine geeks talk about wine, they say, oh, there's aromas of butter and vanilla and coconut and, whatever. It's like some of that's coming from the oak. And those molecules are literally in the oak that are also in those flavors we're describing. They don't come from that other thing. They come from maybe the oak, maybe from the fermentation, the yeast or the bacteria create these flavors, or from the fruit. Grapes have a lot of flavors, like different varieties of grapes, whether it's Muscat, Chardonnay, Zinfandel, etc., have different fruit flavors and actually share molecules. Zinfandel shares molecules with blackberries. So it's actually the same molecule in blackberries and Zinfandel that smell like blackberry. But you just, you don't think about that, but actually grapes, one of the reasons why most wines are made from grapes, like there's other fruit wines, but most wines are made from grapes, it's because grapes have all these diverse molecules.
You don't have that much variation of blackberries, or actually, I guess it could be different berries. But even then, you don't have the same variation that you do with grapes.
So amongst grapes, we have a huge diversity of genetic material that creates different flavors and makes grapes that much more interesting in creating cool flavors. So yeah, some nice geeky wine stuff. Cool. I believe Jerome just poured our next wine here, the V6 Drinking Tree Pinot Noir. So start sipping on that one. I'm going to flash this next quiz question on the screen.
Yeah, and this is the one voluptuary in your lineup here, which, as you described a little earlier in the show, both of the lines are very ethical, organic, natural. Voluptuary is to a very extreme degree. It's very high-end winemaking, very small batch. It's more the kind of stuff, it's great to enjoy, and we're drinking it now and enjoying it. But, it's the kind of wine that you put on your wine shelf or save in your cellar. The Lucid, oftentimes being a lot more accessible, easy drinking, just made more for your everyman, done in larger batch sizes as well. So it's a little more accessible price point, $18 or $28 for most of them. So it's the kind of thing that you can just, you can drink a little more regularly, whereas we can't, always drink a $68 bottle of wine to relax in the evening.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there was some cool comments. Some serious chemistry and wine nerds enjoyed the wine geekery. Thank you guys. I really like to geek out on wine, and I really like talking about like all the crazy chemistry and techniques behind it. And honestly, it bores a lot of people. So I'm glad there's some really excited, interested wine and science geeks in the crowd. So okay, cool. The next question I popped up is, what is the drying effect experienced when drinking some red wines caused by? It's a really awkward sentence the way I read it down, and I had to make it even shorter to fit it on the screen, but I think you get the point. Like when you drink red wine, you get a very drying effect. What is that caused by? There's a couple of correct answers here. You know, I'm gonna throw out a few because this is kind of a hard one, and I've been told the questions are kind of hard so far, so I'm gonna give some help here. Is it caused by alcohol? Is it caused by acid in the wine?
Or is it the weed?
No, my third multiple choice answer is cottonmouth. No, that's not. Yeah, we didn't talk about this beforehand. That's is it caused by unripe persimmons, or is it caused by polyphenols, or is it caused by tannins? So, like I said, there's a couple correct answers here. If you do smoke before you drink red wine, that could be cottonmouth, but that's fairly obvious. Like, you know, when your professor throws in like the obviously wrong answer. Yeah. Anyway. So, your next wine here, V6 Drinking Tree Pinot Noir. I saw Shannon, who's commenting nicely and enjoyed the wines. I saw that your bottle broke. I'm sorry about that. That sucks when bottles break. We'll definitely get you some more wine there. So the Pinot Noir is a wine that, you know, it is one of our more high-end wines. This is from an organically grown vineyard down in Santa Cruz area. Technically Portola AVA, but it's at the base of the in the foothills of the Santa Cruz Mountains. Really awesome, super small production. They're about an acre and a half, super tiny. He has his own small winery, and I'm the only person who gets any of his grapes other than him. Really beautiful hand, like literally a team of locals. And I mean, I went out there, I was like, why are they taking so long to pick the grapes? And I went and visited the vineyard, and it was a team of like 10 of his friends, most of them like 70 years or older, literally like sitting on chairs next to the vine and like picking a grape and sitting there looking at the grape, picking out any individual grapes that weren't perfect.
They're all wearing those like gem inspector goggles where they put it down.
Pretty much like a couple, yeah, that seems more or less. And it was just like the most perfect, like no berry wrong cluster that they laid in a tiny tray, and they were picking each cluster this way. I mean, it was insane. We picked like a ton, not even a ton. It was like less than a ton of grapes, like 2 bins, and it took like 10 hours, which normally that takes like 30 minutes from a professional picking crew. So this was insane. This was like ridiculously long, but it was the most perfect grapes I've ever seen in 15 years in this industry. So that was one of the reasons this wine is $68. These are really amazing grapes. And I only made 1 barrel of this wine. It's organically grown and fermented with a portion of whole cluster. So whole cluster fermentation is a technique that you get some whole berries, and through that whole berry fermentation, not only is there some of the things I talked about earlier where you're not extracting the skin contents immediately, but you also get an effect where there's a metabolic fermentation which occurs inside of the grape. We call them berries in the industry. The grape berry, which metabolically it's a chemical reaction, it's not biological from yeast or bacteria. So then it starts to actually turn the sugar to alcohol.
So it's just natural, like basically from the sun and the natural aging of the grape.
Yeah,
it's still
and
a berry.
the metabolism of the grape itself.
Right, so like it's that natural aging of it.
Yeah. And so then what you get, a little bit of alcohol production, but also it produces flavors that are along the lines of like strawberry bubble gum and like hard candy, like Jolly Rancher. So it's a really trippy flavor. So you get a pinch of that, but then the fact that that is on a stem creates some green tea leaf earthy flavors. So you get this mix of like hyper fruitiness and hyper like green herbaceous spiciness. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the things that it's a technique used in a lot of really traditional Pinots that both makes Pinot Noir a light wine that's very fruity, but also a wine inclined towards herbaceous green flavors and spicy earthy flavors.
First thing that makes me think of is like a fresh tomato, and you get that fruit sweet nature, but when you still got like the stems with it and they have that other earthy green, herbaceous note where it's like you recognize that as tomato, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
And you can actually even sort of taste that on this.
And sommeliers oftentimes describe Pinot Noir as having a tomato leaf flavor.
Huh.
So yeah, that's totally on point. It's like fresh tomatoes. If you garden, like when you grab that tomato, it's like, yeah, you get a bit of that.
And if you're one of our fans, you probably do.
Yeah. Honestly, Jerome jokes that like, if you're ever looking like, and he's gotten this message from our fans, but if he's ever wondering like, wait, which house is it? I'm not sure which apartment or which home I need to deliver this wine package to. If he's lost, he looks around, and if there are plants or a garden or like a flourishing front yard, that's our customer.
and people that say that on their orders. It's like oh my god, there's all these apartments here. Which one is Sanny's? And it's like, oh, it's the one with the sculptures and all the plants. Like, there's 4 apartments. Which ones does Diana live in? You go, oh, look at those tomatoes. They're coming in. Like same thing. Go by Becca's, and there's plants everywhere. It's how we roll.
Yeah. So, thank you guys for being urban farmers.
And that's how you'll find my mom's house.
So, okay, the answer to this question, the drying effect experienced when drinking red wines, is caused by, we usually call them tannins. They are technically, from a chemistry point of view, polyphenols. They are, but also a correct answer is astringency, because that's actually the flavor. Like flavor chemists and cooks and stuff will refer to astringency. It's something you also get in unripe persimmons, which is why I threw that in as an answer. You also get it from unripe bananas. Like, have you ever tried to like eat an almost green banana? That like slightly drying effect. It's a very similar feeling to cottonmouth, actually. So that's why I joke about that. But it is called astringency. And I
wonder if very tannic wines would pair well with things like that. Unripe persimmons, or tying them in with some of the things you're describing.
Well, it would enhance that flavor, which might be a good thing. Like if the wine's lacking in tannins, like a really light sweet wine or something, you're like, I want this to be harsher. Not harsher, but like heavier.
Right.
You might want that effect, and maybe then
double fry up some plantains and do it with the skin contact or something, since it doesn't have a whole lot. And
plantains is a really good reference, because that is totally like plantains have that quality. It's one of the reasons why plantains have to be cooked, not like you don't eat them raw as often. Yeah. So okay, cool. So that is the answer to that question, and we are going to flash this next question up on the screen in a second here. Sorry.
Were you watching Space Force?
Actually, it was Community. I just got into Community. I haven't watched Netflix in like months because I've been too busy, and I was like ready to burn out just from like not sleeping with everything going on in the world and business. And I watched some Community last night. Very fun show. If you've ever watched it,
I have. I'm a big fan. Although I trailed out somewhere after like season 6 or something like that, but it's quite a long running show.
Yeah, it definitely did last a long time. And I'm noticing that our show tonight is actually running long, but we're still we got a lot of people following.
It is. We'll be moving on to that 5th one in just a minute, though. Yeah, we tend to, and we've got a lot of acts. We've got a lot of activities. We'll like things brief to keep it under an hour. And when we don't have any guests or performances, we let ourselves ramble a little bit about our chosen subjects, and this will sometimes happen. So
so okay, so that Pinot Noir, very nice wine. Last comment here. My literary pairing for this is from Oprah Winfrey. Challenges are gifts that force us to search for a new center of gravity. Don't fight them, just find a new way to stand. And my music pairing is September by Earth, Wind, and Fire. And yeah, the Pinot Noir for me, you got your food pairings of Moroccan influenced dishes. I think for me, it's like spiced dishes like lamb and pork with that sort of Middle Eastern cumin, clove, that kind of thing.
I was actually, you're stealing words out of my mouth. I almost said cumin right before you. I really do think that was kind of like warming spices. It's like, and you said clove, and a lot of the others, so they're not traditionally considered savory spices, like things like cinnamon or nutmeg that you can use as a meat rub or with your chicken. Like I could see those being very good pairings for this. Or, as we were discussing, things like the tomatoes. Do the tomatoes in a very fresh state, some lamb, cook it up over
Yeah.
the cast iron, deep sauce.
It's sounding good, as is.
Damn, I'm so hungry now.
and Shannon Madison's throwing out her pairing for the Pinot Noir was carrot and cheddar soup with parsley garnish, which is a trippy mix, but I really like that. Like the carrot has some of that same sort of green, earthy flavor, but then the parsley garnish brings in that green, almost tomato leaf characteristic. That's a pretty cool mix. I enjoy that.
Mix in with your parsley, the tomato
Tomato
leaves
leaf.
themselves. Like that would be.
Could do.
Yeah.
So, okay.
I love her pairings.
The next trivia question we have up is, which has a higher pressure? And the options are a bottle of champagne, a car tire, or a hard seltzer, like a can of hard seltzer. So we've got some good guesses here already, and I think most of you this is a fairly easy one. Most of you are getting this correct. We're going to go ahead and pour this next wine here now. So the next wine is the L7 Delirium Cabernet Sauvignon. By the way, I haven't really mentioned this yet, but all of our Lucid wines have art on their labels from Micah Crandallbear, a local artist who's gone international now and incredibly successful. And all of our voluptuary wines have art from Robert and Shauna Park Harrison, some iconic artists off the East Coast who pioneered, manipulated photography. It's all analog, darkroom, beautiful fine art photography. So really cool art on these guys. This L7 Delirium Cabernet Sauvignon, my flavor description here literally says it's like eating fruit in a forest, but fruit that gets you drunk. I think that's very valid.
I think that's very deep.
Yeah. So this is Cabernet Sauvignon from the Sierra Nevada foothills here in California. It was aged a fairly long time, about 20 months, on maple, hickory, cherry, whiskey wood, cedar, and cypress. So you can see why it's like drinking wine in a forest. Or eating fruit in a forest. It definitely was aged on a lot of different woods, and I experiment with all these woods. Cedar and cypress were some of the more extreme woods that I tried. And I first got the idea because in some of the most amazing, complex, earthy, spicy, ageable red wines, you'll hear descriptions like cedar. And I thought, well, let's actually see what happens if I age a wine on cedar. It adds a really herbaceous aromatic that's like earthy, spicy, foresty.
And I find it really interesting because I talk about the woods he uses and how they relate into terroir. I mean, that's not normally the way it's used, but it's basically that, how it ties into nature. And applewood, lemonwood, cherry wood, oak, maple, they're all hardwoods. They're all native to the Americas. Cedar is really interesting to me as a choice because it is not. It largely comes from Europe, and it is a softwood, and it is by far the most aromatic of all of them. I mean, you often hear it described as aromatic cedar, and it really does produce these. You still have those maple, cherry, hickory woods that it's aged on that are, medium to cold temperature wines, not, from the coastline, more in the mountains or along the rivers type of terroir. But then you've got this extreme, like aromatic, woodsy, spicy note that comes from the cypress and the cedar, kind of adding a different angle to it.
Yeah. Okay, so the answer to the question, pretty much everyone got it right. It's champagne. Champagne is oftentimes, it's generally between 5 and 6 atmospheres. So
do you know what that is in like
PSI? It's like, what is it, like 17 PSI per atmosphere, which an atmosphere and a bar are basically the same thing. And they're
because a car tire is normally like 30, 35 or so.
Yeah, so that's
what
like
is
2 bar. So this is
Twice as pressurized.
Doing
is
the
that, you said?
math in my head, yeah, it's like a tire is like 34 psi, and a bottle of champagne will be somewhere in the range of like 60. I did that math badly. Yeah, so it's somewhere around there. So it's much higher actually. So in terms of bar or atmosphere, a champagne is 5 to 6. Prosecco is usually a little lower, like 4 to 5. Sometimes sparkling will be as low as 3 to 4. Most ciders and like more carbonated beers are in the high 2s or low 3s, and most beers are about 2.5 to 3. You will occasionally get things like stouts and porters that are in the mid to low 2s. And then once you get below 2, that's the area where you see more like lightly effervescent things. Hard seltzer, I actually don't know hard seltzer. That was just like a throw-in. But
So how do you
probably
know
around
it's not
3.
like 300 psi or something?
Definitely not. Yeah, it's like
No.
3 or 4. But
My main takeaway from all this is it sounds like my idea of turning my spare tire into a champagne kegerator is probably off the table. It's just not going to hold the pressure.
Yeah. That's a fun idea. So okay, cool. We have our next question up here. What is the molecule responsible for the positive health effect of red wine on the heart? Now I'm going to throw out some suggestions here. Tannins, phenols, procyanidins, anthocyanidins, antioxidants, alcohol, resveratrol. Those are some things that are in red wine. So we'll leave that one up for a little while. That is a really hard question, actually. It's a seemingly really hard question.
Are you pro or anti-cyanidine or whatever?
Right? Yeah, procyanidins. Yeah, procyanidins are something that bind with red wine color to make it last longer and be more stable, so that it can result in long-term color. Yeah, that's deep.
Well, wow.
That sounds like a
Let's
metaphor,
go.
but it isn't. Anyway. Oh, by the way, if you guys have been wondering what my other thing I'm drinking is, this is Device Brewing. They're a local Sacramento brewery that is literally in our parking lot. They're about a 30-second walk from us. So we're probably going to do some collaborations with them, or at least share customers who go from beer to wine and wine to beer. Really cool local brewery. They are decently widely distributed for a local brewery, and really cool folks over there. They let me borrow their forklift. If you guys ever visit and you wonder how we get all of our barrels stacked, considering there is no forklift in this winery, it's because Device Brewing lets me borrow their forklift, as does the steel fabricator next to us. It's one of the nice things about being in an industrial lot.
AMD Metalworks. Check them out.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be making a really cool sign for us. They actually made this little mini sign. This was a prototype. They're going to be making a much cooler, large sign to be right in front of our wine tasting room. Well, it's a production area / tasting room. It's kind of like a microbrewery. We're pretty low key. So, okay. The molecule responsible. I'm just going to launch into this because I have 2 more questions and we're almost finished with our last wine. The answer to this is pretty much all of the above, because there have been studies finding that any of them, when independently studied, has some positive effect. And they've had a really hard time identifying which one is the cause, because different studies have found different molecules that have a positive health effect in wine. And I think that for the same reason that wine flavor is really, really complex, I think wine's health effects are really complex, because alcohol has been shown to have a positive effect on health, as have so many different things. Resveratrol, anthocyanins, and tannins are some of the top candidates. But there's a lot of potentially correct answers there. They actually don't have the answer yet. We just know that red wine seems to have this positive effect. But in fact, a lot of studies have found that white wine, beer, and liquor also have some positive effect on the heart. And it appears that alcohol itself has some positive effect on the heart. But as that effect goes up, the more you drink on a per night on a daily basis, the more you drink has a negative effect on other health things. The intersection there seems to be about 2 drinks a night.
So
And
moderation.
Moderation, as with almost everything, moderate drinking of alcohol, 1 to 2 drinks a night, seems to be beautifully positive for health in almost every way. Once you drink more than that, maybe a little less. 3 to 4, still okay, but not as good. 5 or more, very bad for health. So moderation. Yeah, that's a fun one. So,
Well, I was going to, while you prepared the next question, so we can get a couple more.
oh
in
yeah,
there,
yeah.
show one other thing here. So what you see here is some of the gifts that can come along with a subscription package. So we've got various options, 1, 2, or 3 bottle, voluptuary, lucid, or mixed. And each month, along with your wines, you get gifts from local artists, handcrafted and always fun and useful, like you see here, along with free shipping or delivery. So it's a way for you to invest in us, invest in your own good times, and invest in the good people in your community that are raising it up and producing awesome things. So another one of those things where we don't expect everybody to do, but if you want to support us and the community and be able to enjoy it and drink your way through, it's another good way to do so. Up again. And then you see my electric delivery bicycle as I change scenes there. Oh, I forgot to move the mic. Hopefully that all came through there. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the pretty pictures.
The mic tends to be pretty good at picking this stuff up. But okay, so there was some. I honestly, it took me a second to pop up the new question because I was really enjoying the commentary in the comments section way too much. Shannon Madison saying that her answer for what causes the positive health effects on wine is cardiac strings with a raspberry truffle, which is awesome.
We might have to have her as like a guest commentator or something.
She also pointed out that they ordered the bottles, not the little carafe things, and the moderation thing does not apply to her. So okay, cool.
No judgment.
My next question here was, what is a bung used for at a winery? So this is a fun question.
Trick question.
Yeah. Yeah, and
I'm not going to venture a guess on this one.
Yeah, so I was my printing got cut off here, but I actually have to look at my cheat sheet here over here. So the is it used for? I'm going to give you some suggestions. We already have a lot of guesses, but is it used for throwing at your coworker, sealing a bottle of wine, shipping wine, or plugging a bunghole? So yeah. So okay, those are just some suggestions that not necessarily the answers. Yeah, one of them is the answer.
You said shipping wine, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Okay, so the life pairing for this is building your own furniture. You know, it is so woodsy, and coming from such a family where my family builds furniture, or maybe riding a stallion into battle, or reading leather-bound books while sitting in your armchair at a desk made of rich mahogany.
This tastes like the most tannic of the lineup we've had tonight. Am I right in that? Or
yeah, it is the most tannic, which is one of the reasons why I tried to time that question with this wine. It is a wine that both has that red wine astringency and also has it's probably the healthiest red wine in the lineup because it has the most tannins and the highest content of a lot of those molecules that create that positive health effect.
Polyphenols and stuff.
Exactly. Ooh, you're learning. So this is doubling as a training session for Jerome. This is a lot of obscure facts. And my literary pairing for this is from Khalil Gibran from his book, The Prophet. And the quote is, "Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. It is the bitter potion by which the physician within you heals your sick self. Therefore, trust the physician and drink his remedy in silence and tranquility." So, I would
highly recommend that book for anybody. For anybody, really. It's one of those ones that it's deep and meaningful, but it's also, I want to say, like easily digestible in short, like bursts. Like it'd be a good like bedtime read or bathroom browser or whatever. Just because it's one that you can flip open and there's going to be something incredible just
Yeah.
about everywhere in there. And it's not like, oh, I missed the last episode. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about, you know?
A lot of good wisdom there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that one just really has always spoken to me, because especially when I'm going through hard times or mild depression or not mild depression, it's one of those ones that helps remind me that when we feel pain, when we feel struggle, when something's difficult or challenging, oftentimes it's because there's something within us or in our life trying to tell us that we need change.
A lot
And-
of your negative emotions, pain, fear, depression, etc. Well, depression is sometimes just a chemical imbalance or other forces, but a lot of the negative feelings that we have are really your body warning you,
Yeah.
telling you something. This is
Why-
hurting you. Don't do that.
Yeah.
This is causing you, this negative effect. It's just your body's warning signals.
Exactly
Your
right,
spidey
yeah.
sense going off.
Exactly. So I think this quote speaks to that on a very deep philosophical level, where it's like, if you're feeling these things, if you're seeing something wrong in the world around you, it's probably because there's something that needs to change. So yeah, I think that's a beautiful quote from Khalil Gibran. So that is our last wine. The answer to that question is plugging a bunghole. Let's see. Oh, that's attached to something. There we go. So this is a bung. It is a thing that goes in a barrel to plug the hole in a barrel, which we fill a barrel with. There's a hole. You put your barrel spear in there, and you pump wine into the barrel. We call it a bung hole, and we call this a bung. I learned this on like my third day of class at wine school at UC Davis.
He was still giggling on the fourth day.
So I laughed out loud when they said that. I didn't know this before I learned it. And when I was told this, it just made me giggle uncontrollably. And everyone in class looked at me like I was just crazy. And I was like, I looked back at everyone and said, if you guys aren't laughing at that, you're the crazy ones. Like, I can't remember exactly what I said, but something like that. I just think that is admittedly a hilarious thing. You have to at least laugh at that once in your life. It is called a bung. All right. So I'm going to pop up the last question here as we do our closing out.
Yeah, and I agree with him. You gotta laugh at stuff like that. I mean, bodily function humor it's like the constant from childhood to adulthood. I mean, like, poop jokes aren't my favorite, but they're like a solid number 2. Sorry.
That's good. Okay. And because hopefully you're all a bit tipsy by now and having a good time, I decided to throw a really difficult question at you. So, okay. This refers to that hint I gave you guys earlier about the concept of a standard drink. Now, which has more alcohol? A 6-pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon, 1 bottle of our L8 Wanderlust Red Blend, or a really strong Long Island iced tea at your local dive bar? This is a good question, right?
Right, it is.
I
Because
actually
at
have to
first
do
I
a-
was like, I started doing the math on the first 2 in my head. I was like, I think I know it. But the Long Island is so alcohol heavy. I
Yeah.
think it might, like,
I had way too much fun with this question. Okay, so I'll let you guys think about that for a second, and I'm going to kind of close out here. We're tasting this last wine. We've done all of our wines and all of our weird pairings and over the top jokes and whatnot. I hope you guys have really enjoyed this trivia night. This has been a crazy week in the world, and thank you guys for joining us. I know there's a lot going on. I appreciate your support one way or another, and I appreciate everyone who's out there, and not here tonight for many good reasons. And just, thank you, everyone. Thank you for your support. Thank you for being a part of what we're trying to do here. We're going to be doing some awesome tastings in coming up weeks. Next week is our summertime barbecue special. We're going to throw out some food pairings there, but it's not exactly a food pairing special. It's just kind of a laid back, fun event. We're going to have some live music. It's just going to be a good time. And then the week after that, we have our Father's Day special. And that's just going to have a variety of Father's Day themes and wines that just sort of make sense for dads. tends to fit dad's palates. And, we're going to keep doing it every Saturday, 5 p.m. We're going to do a live tasting. It's just going to continue forever because this has been so popular. We have had so much support from across the country, all across the U.S., as well as locally and here in California.
Yeah, we're going to have a couple other, we're going to continue this as long as we can, and we're going to continue to refresh themes and repeat popular ones. But 2 others that we have coming up, haven't set the dates on, but we do have in the works. Is one of them is a bingo night where the bingo squares will be Kevin or I's quirks and repeat bad jokes and things like that. So you'll all get randomized squares, and if you catch us standing too close or wearing some hipster piece of clothing or repeating some French phrase that nobody knows, you'll be able to mark off your squares and win things. Another is we're going to be teaming with the SPCA, and we'll be crawling with kittens while drinking our wines.
Yeah, we're going to do animal pairings, not to eat them, but it will have like a kitten whose personality matches a wine. It might be cats, it might be dogs. We haven't decided yet. Feel free to vote for whether we do cats or dogs. But yeah, we're going to work the SPCA for that one. That's going to be really fun. It'll be sort of an adoption drive, but right now apparently they have more than enough adoptions. But we're going to be just working with them on that. So okay, the answer to our final question is our L8 Wanderlust Red Blend.
Whoa.
That was right. You wouldn't guess it. And
is it a higher alcohol percentage than most? Because judging by what you were saying earlier, if there's 5 glasses in a bottle and
6.
5 bottles, that would be equal to a can of beer, then you would think that the 6 cans of beer would be more. Is Pabst lower alcohol than standard, or is the Wanderlust higher, or is it both?
So I originally had Bud Light down for this question, but it was kind of too obvious because then I'm obviously skewing towards a light beer. Yeah. Pabst is one that's not super light. It's 4.2%. And it's kind of on the lighter side of beer, but it's not super light. This is like a standard. I mean, Bud and Coors are more or less the same. The standard Bud and Coors, not the light. So these are all around 4.4 to 4.5. Now, 4.2% is, 4.6% for Pabst. That adds up to, because a standard beer is 12 ounces at 5%. But a lot of American beers are a little under 5%. So it's not actually 6 standard drinks. That actually adds up to 5.76 standard drinks. Meanwhile, a standard glass of wine is 5 ounces or 150 milliliters at 12% alcohol. Now, this is largely based on European standards where wine tends to be a little lower alcohol. And our voluptuary wines are a little more European in style and therefore tend to more be like a standard drink. But our L8 Wanderlust Red Blend, which is our most popular Lucid wine, is 14.8% alcohol. So it's a little higher alcohol. And therefore, 1 bottle of wine is 6.17 standard drinks.
So you're saying I somehow randomly, the one of your wines that I like the most is the highest alcohol content one?
Yeah. And it is the most popular overall. So people like alcohol, we've learned. And I think this is really surprising because people sometimes go, oh man, that bottle of wine's like $18 for a micro winery, tiny production bottle of wine. And I think they're thinking it's just so much less alcohol than their 6-pack of microbrew that they're easily paying $15 for, and I sometimes like to point that out if it's like I'm selling wine to one of their like construction workers or like shop guys in the parking lot. I'll
That's a 6-pack of beer right
this
there.
This is a 6-pack of beer right here. It's a lot of alcohol. So, not that you're drinking for the alcohol, but if you are, yeah, wine's actually not a bad bang for the buck.
You guys aren't drinking for the alcohol, are you?
It may be part of it. Anyway, on that note, I think I'm going to go pour myself a glass of scotch and relax after the show. Thank you guys for joining us. Keep up the good work out there. Again, thank you for your support, and we will see you guys again soon.
Fight the good fight.